Hello, everyone. It is Saturday, the 23rd of November, 2024, and I do have a lot to get into. There are some interesting developments that are making mainstream media now, which may be a good thing or a bad thing, or end up making things around the world a little bit more of a shit show, right? I'm not going to talk too much about what's going on in the Middle East and the potential for World War III or any of that stuff. I could talk a little bit about Russia and Ukraine and proxy wars and Poland and Germany and NATO and Rheinmetall and Lockheed Martin and so many different things regarding that. But again, this is stuff that I've been talking about and warning people about now for literally years. And this is applicable right now because I'm going to share a video regarding Lauren Southern and absolutely slayed Canadian Parliament's Russian disinformation witch hunt. This is from Dan Dix, Press for Truth. I've shared multiple of his videos. He's excellent. And he's been at this for at least 18 years that I'm tracking. And I really like this video. And this is what I'm telling you. There's people within government that are targeting Canadians that are sharing information on social media platforms. And they're targeting them. And they're trying to threaten us, harass us, intimidate us, censor us. And we still need to get this information out there, people that are able to, and are actually sharing more accurate information than anyone right now that I'm tracking the highest levels of the Canadian government, and the ones that are responsible for spreading the most misinformation and disinformation there is. So it's the irony that she's getting questioned by people within government regarding disinformation.
This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, coming at you here today with an important update about this so-called Russian disinformation campaign that was using influencers in the field of alternative media to allegedly spread disinformation. Now, in case you didn't know, Lauren Southern has been summoned by the Canadian Parliament to testify in front of this Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security, and she absolutely slayed these people who were engaging in what essentially could amount to nothing more than a witch hunt. It was absolutely a brilliant masterclass in how to deal with this type of situation. If you're not familiar with the story, guys, I reported on it when it broke back in September. Russiagate 3.0 begins. The U.S. Department of Justice has accused several conservative influencers of unwittingly working for a Kremlin-funded media outlet, according to a federal indictment that alleges that a Tennessee-based media company, later identified as Tenet Media, received nearly $10 million from employees of a Russian state-backed media company, Russia Today, as part of a scheme to create and distribute content to U.S. audiences with hidden Russian government messaging. Russian meddling was the theme in 2016 after Trump got in. It was the same in 2020 with the Hunter Biden laptop conspiracy. And now the DOJ is attempting to do it again with the idea that Russia is influencing the U.S. audiences with hidden Russian government messaging. It's absolutely ridiculous. And since this came out, you can see Lauren Southern has been pretty quiet on her Twitter. She hasn't said anything about this, but she has since been summoned to the Canadian Parliament and is being forced now to speak about this. The full video was recently just posted here by Viva Fry, who says, here's the full hearing of Lauren Southern answering questions from Parliament about Russian disinformation, the Tenet Media scandal. Recall the Russian Tenet Media nonsense. 2 alleged RT representatives indicted for allegedly financing Lauren Chen's Tenet Media to propagate Russian disinformation through popular right-wing commentators. Lauren Chen was subpoenaed by Parliament. She basically pleaded the Canadian equivalent of the Fifth, just saying no comment to pretty much every question. Lauren Southern didn't. She answered, and she was amazing. It is a must watch, not just because it's an Orwellian, Kafka-esque nightmare, but because it highlights how utterly stupid, corrupt, and incompetent our elected officials are. Like, they are truly stupid. truly the bottom of the barrel, unintelligent, lazy bureaucrats. And indeed, he nailed it, guys. So today we're going to cover some of the highlights of this hour-long incredible masterclass in how to totally slay these politicians, where she reveals a lot of very interesting information, including the fact that she was contacted and had CSIS agents show up at her house and ask her to become an informant. When she refused to do so, they began to harass her and make threats to her family, guys. This is pretty huge news. So we're going to break it all down in this video. Really quickly, though, before we do, guys, I'd ask that you check me out here at subscribestar.com/pressfortruth if you appreciate my efforts to continuously bring you guys this type of information. And once again, here is where you can sign up for $5 a month or $10 or $20. Whatever is within your means, guys, is very, very greatly appreciated. I simply can't continue to do this work without the support that comes directly from you, the viewers, guys. So if that kind of a relationship is something that you appreciate, please check that top link in the description below to where you can find me on subscribestar.com/pressfortruth. All right, guys, in case you didn't know, Lauren Southern and I go back a long time. This is us almost 10 years ago now. When I first met her in 2015, she was a young 19-year-old journalist at the time, and I saw a lot of potential in her. So I contacted her and I met up with her. I did this interview with her back in 2015, talking about, you know, she's anti-feminist while also being a libertarian. And I remember at the time there was a little bit of a rift between her and the leader of the Libertarian Party. So I had invited the both of them to come onto my show and to kind of hash out and settle their differences, and they did. It was great. From there, you know, the following year here in 2016, Lauren joined me in Germany to cover the annual Bilderberg conference. That was pretty interesting, and we've done a lot together since. Here we are in 2018. We were both speaking at a conference in Acapulco, Mexico called Anarchapulco. Here's my wife looking very, very excited to meet Lauren Southern. And I mean, rightly so, because she's absolutely killing it. The first time we ever did some like a street action type of thing together was back in 2016. I put this one out: Social Justice Warriors Piss on Your Free Speech. Lauren Southern Attacked. By the way, guys, that's been deleted from YouTube, as you can see. But if you go to altcensored.com and you do a search for that title, you will find the video right here. And as you see, it went pretty mega viral back then, getting 830,000 views, almost getting 1 million views before being terminated by YouTube. But the point is, she's been a powerhouse superstar since, you know, the very, first time I recognized her potential back when she was just a young 19-year-old journalist starting out on her own. And now, guys, just watch how she handled herself here, surrounded by a bunch of parliamentarians grilling her over this nonsense Russian disinformation meme that has been going on since 2016 and has been proven time and time again to be a giant nothing burger. This is just a huge waste of time. And she absolutely makes that, reveals that throughout this entire interrogation. So let's watch a little bit of some of the best moments together. This is from Viva Fry's upload of the full hearings. And let me just play for you her opening statement, because it's important for context if you're not familiar with the story. So here's her opening statement to this, 20 or 30 parliamentarians who are about to grill her on this issue. So listen closely.
Honorable Chair, esteemed members of this committee, I would like to thank you for so enthusiastically inviting me to speak today. My name is Lauren Southern. I am a filmmaker, a YouTuber, and a proud Canadian. In late 2023, I was contracted to make weekly videos by a startup company called Tenet Media. Then recently, the U.S. Department of Justice released an indictment which alleges the founders of Tenet created the company in conjunction with 2 Russian citizens, with funding ultimately originating from the Russian government. Per the indictment, the founders of Tenet Media deceived the personalities they contracted regarding their alleged source of funding. I'll make a few points clear at the outset. At no point in my involvement with Tenet did I ever have knowledge of the allegations in the indictment. And two, the only person who ever had any creative control over my videos was me. No one from Tenet or anywhere else ever dictated what topics I covered or what opinions I held. I always seek to fight disinformation in all of its forms, and therefore I have a duty to inform this committee that disinformation has been spreading within these very walls. Some in the media and even witnesses to this committee have attempted to paint a picture of Tenet as a hugely influential player in the political media landscape. This, frankly, is just not true. A previous witness to this committee who went unchallenged stated that Tenet Media controlled a network of over 16 million subscribers. This is not true. On their largest platform, YouTube, Tenet had barely over 300,000 subscribers. I believe the 16 million figure referred to the total number of subscribers among all of the personalities who had videos contracted or licensed by Tenet. Subscriber base is that, given all of the facts, Tenet had absolutely no control over. To claim that Tenet controlled those subscribers would be like claiming that a TV network had influence over the United States presidency because they air reruns of The Apprentice. The same witness claimed Tenet garnered over 1 billion video views and 20 billion impressions. I have absolutely no idea where those numbers came from. Very readily available public data shows that on its largest platform, YouTube, Tenet received only 16 million total views. Based on the witness's specious numbers, he asserted that Russia received extraordinary value for their money. Anyone with even a cursory understanding of new media would know, however, that $10 million for 16 million views on YouTube hardly qualifies as extraordinary value. In fact, it qualifies as a total failure. So there is, in fact, a silver lining here. If the allegations are true, it appears Russia did attempt to influence Western media, but they failed pretty miserably. Now, I know the chief concern of this committee is how this debacle may have influenced Canadians. Well, I was the only Canadian commentator and the only host that consistently discussed Canadian issues. In fact, if the company had any creative control over me, which they didn't, they probably would have asked me to stop making Canadian videos since they didn't perform very well. So if you were worried about this alleged Russian money unduly influencing Canadian issues, good news, didn't happen. And I'll be honest, it has been surreal for me to watch our government, experts, and media assert that scripts I would jot down in my notes app in a line at the grocery store were secretly part of a giant foreign influence campaign. Arguably, the largest actual impact on Canadians here has been the amount of tax dollars they've had to spend investigating this non-issue. Some in the media and this government seem to have concluded that the only reason a regular Canadian could possibly hold certain views that do not align with the current Liberal administration is because of pernicious, widespread Russian disinformation. I would like to propose an alternative hypothesis, and I know it may sound insane. I know this breaches the borders of conceivable thought, but maybe, just maybe, some Canadians consulted their own moral compass and decided they don't want this country funding foreign wars. Maybe they looked around them at the hospital lineups or housing prices and thought immigration might be a little high. Maybe they lost their business during lockdown and think, I worry about my freedoms in this country. Some in this government are hell-bent on drastically exaggerating the extent of foreign influence because they can't seem to stomach the idea that they might be wrong about something and that a growing majority of Canadians legitimately and organically oppose what they are doing. They simply can't conceive that they are becoming unpopular naturally, so there must be foul play at work. Let me make this abundantly clear once more. No one but myself and my true experiences as a Canadian have informed my opinions. And to any members of this government who may be listening, I would suggest you familiarize yourself with these opinions because they are rapidly becoming the views of the majority of this nation. Thank you.
What a fantastic opening statement. She pretty much laid it all out there, like countering everything they're about to say before they say it. And did it in a rather beautiful way. I mean, in case you guys didn't know, she was essentially, contacted by somebody who was involved with a startup company who said that they were getting money from some tech investor. And, as someone in media who's looking to potentially get funding for her films, I believe she was offered, I think it was $100,000 a year plus expenses. But for that, she had to produce, I think it was 2 or 3 videos a week and 2 mini documentaries a month or something like that, which for somebody who produces, this type of content for a living, I know just how much work goes into that type of thing. So it's really not a crazy contract, to be honest. It's reasonable if that's something, that you're into. It's not how I operate, but this is how Lauren wanted to operate. And I think that is absolutely fine. And, she goes on to point out when they start drilling her about that, there's nothing inherently wrong with what she did here at all. And well, let me just show you. We'll listen to it from the horse's mouth. There's two key people I want you to listen to here. This guy, we'll start it from somewhere around here because he just tries to go hard. And then this other parliamentarian lady who says some of the most insane things you won't even believe. But just listen to how Lauren deals with this guy's.
I know it's a slow roll to get to the video, and I'm sorry for that.
Intense line of questioning here.
To ensure the media in which you are appearing is acting lawfully. Ms. Southern, before collaborating with other influencers, what steps do you take to ensure the media in which you are appearing is acting lawfully?
What steps do I take to ensure the media I'm appearing in is acting lawfully?
Yeah.
I don't think that, as much as I would love to be able to afford a private investigator to go and confirm every contract I sign, 10 years of working with someone in the same industry and 10 years of working with someone in the same industry and being given a very standard boilerplate contract that I would get from any other company. I've never had this happen before. And I think.
And the nerve of people within CSIS, multiple levels of government and cabinet that are committing literal crimes, spreading so much misinformation and disinformation, like I was saying, even hiring, again, criminals, I'll reiterate, and there's foreign interference. People like myself have submitted access to information requests to get the names out there so that these people can be properly investigated, shamed to be properly investigated. That's why we want the names released, because they keep on burying all of this stuff. And so she's going to get to it. I'm just going to share, I already shared this video. Sorry, this clip. Not clip. My goodness, I'm all over the place. Calm down. This article yesterday. But it's just such a disappointment that people are not tracking still, that there's still lawfare being committed against innocent people within Canada because of peacefully sharing medical, scientific, and government data to the public via social media platforms, and then also resisting mandates in a peaceful way and sharing memorandums, up to 10 pages memorandums, citing references. I will reiterate, medical, scientific, and government data. I've shared this on multiple different videos. And it going nowhere. And now a federal judge who's in the pockets of the Minister of National Defense and others, which I shared yesterday as well, throws out lawsuit challenging Canadian Armed Forces vaccine mandate. This destroyed lives, even people that I know personally, people that, even released because of just the pressure, divorced because of this, and moved back in with parents in the early 40s and was pregnant, higher risk for miscarriage anyways, because of the higher risk being the first child. And she did not want to get vaccinated because she was sharing medical information that would suggest it was not good for her to do, even a flu shot. And this is common knowledge because of the thimerosal in flu vaccines. And I'm likely going to get a friggin' strike again on YouTube for this. Yay. But anyway, this is important information. It's not even disinformation or misinformation, or what YouTube likes to say, medical misinformation. It's actually true. These are peer-reviewed, published scientific journals and medical journals that have been published regarding the flu vaccine and pregnant women. This causes abortions, miscarriages, whatever you want to call it, birth defects, neurological disorders, etc. And it's linked to the thimerosal, which turns into mercury in the body. And anyway, and so people like myself were part of the methylquin mass tort since at least, I think, 2017, 2018. And we were trying to sue the government, not for money. And I have this on the record with my emails to Miller, whatever their lawyer company is called. It's out of Toronto. But it's because this was an anti-malarial drug that had already been banned in multiple other countries, and Canada was giving this even afterwards. So how did our government not know that this methylquin was again causing death? It was making people suffer from like having homicidal and suicidal tendencies and enacted out nightmares. Anyways, there's so many permanent life-altering disabilities because of this anti-malarial drug that people were required to take prior to and then during deployments, and I took it as well, and I stopped taking it because I was getting crazy hot sweats and nightmares and stuff like that, and I'm like, this not for me. And anyways, it was to make it where and there were links, again, because we get mass inoculated, like even when we first get in the military, and then prior to deployments, it's done, right? And so we need to look at the link of people that have issues, like serious issues post vaccine, whatever you want to call it, implementation, inoculation. And but yeah, that just kept on getting delayed, and it's still delayed. And during COVID, like that was the update that was given, that it was delayed because of the mandates and stuff like that, and it was a pandemic, like I've said. And yeah, and so if that would have went through, then COVID would have rolled out drastically differently, because we had irrefutable evidence that suggests, like medical and scientific evidence, that people should have known that this was causing these issues in other countries, and that's why it was banned and stuff like that. And so they're saying the same thing about these therapeutics for COVID. We were giving a lot of information because we were already like a little concerned about how things had rolled out in the past, and then go down rabbit holes, and you see that this happens a lot more than we think. And anyway, so I'm rambling on, but it was dropped, and then completely tried to discredit the people that were part of this lawsuit. And again, there's people that I know personally that were kicked out while pregnant, and with over 21 years service at the time, and yeah, and drastically impacted their lives, right? Where her husband was also an officer, and he got vaccinated, and he was pressuring her to as well, and she didn't want to, because she didn't want to risk having any type of impact to the friggin' baby, right? And anyway, so she was part of this lawsuit, and so she's disappointed. It's expected. Helen Bruce too, lawfare. She was Ottawa Police Services over 22 years as well, or whatever, during the time of COVID, the Freedom Convoy. And she was suspended that first weekend on the 29th of January, 2022. She was in my network since 2016, where we worked on higher level contracts with the highest levels of government, including Global Affairs Canada and DART, and high levels military, etc. And she's still in the courts. It's been over 2 years now. And yeah, it's been such a sketchy trial, to say the least, and she could only find lawyers at Edmonton, so she has to pay a lot of money just to get them flown in at any time there's any kind of a court date. And these are always like a few days long, at least to a week. And it's she's over $100,000 in debt, and she's a grandmother, and she's a hero. And she was trying to give the same information I was providing at the time as well, medical, scientific, and government data. And yeah, and she was seen as some kind of a conspiracy theorist, and she was, like I said, suspended, charged, still in the courts, over 2 years, a lot of money out of pocket, of course. And I think she's likely, again, like, because of everything else I'm seeing, people are getting found guilty of things they did during the Freedom Convoy, peacefully, very peacefully, and necessary, because people within government were not listening, and there were further restrictions being imposed, even in January of 2022, where they wanted it to be mandated or approved for even younger than 5 years old, and where there was going to be a requirement for schools. It might be now, I don't know. And anyways, and so, yeah, like, people's hands were forced. And again, I'll reiterate, it was peaceful, and there's been multiple protests since then. But again, it's supporting the leftist woke agenda. And so these people can commit crimes. They can threaten law enforcement. They can obstruct highways, and they get away with it, right? And even now in Montreal, if you're looking at the videos, there's people that are pro Hamas protesters, and again, like 5% of these people, at least, they're paid and funded by the government, and this is organized. And then you get people that get suckered into doing this stuff, right? And yes, there's money coming out of the Middle East as well to fund these protests. It's very interesting times. But anyways, no one's going to jail for that stuff. And we got Pat King, who was just found guilty on 5 charges. I'm sure everyone knows this as well. And he is someone that took the government to court, Bonnie Henry and Dina Hinshaw, for example, in Alberta. And he wanted them to prove that they isolated the virus, and they were not able to do it. And so they did so many different things to try to get him where he wasn't even able to go to court, right? Changing the location, changing the date on him last minute. So many things that they did that was just disgusting. And again, it's all out of pocket. And he might face 10 years in jail. And I will reiterate, he was peaceful. He was calling for peaceful protests. He was trying to speak out publicly to cause less harm and have people have more informed consent. And he's like, again, this is just this week. This is lawfare. This is absolutely punishing people that were, in my opinion, heroes. And despite getting harassed, stalked, contacted, threatened, intimidated, I myself as well, having the wherewithal to be calm as possible and just speak the truth. So let me see. I'm just looking at. I had something up on Pat King. So, anyways, it's international news. So, Canada Freedom Convoy organizer found guilty of mischief. This was posted today. BBC News. One of the central organizers behind the Freedom Convoy protest that caused Canada's capital to descend into gridlock for weeks in 2022 has been found guilty of mischief. Again, this is not even true. It wasn't gridlock at all. And again, I will reiterate, people within government were staging and planning events and trying to elicit emotional responses in people. And they were using media like they always do, the mainstream state-funded media, biggest propagators of misinformation. Oh my God. And disinformation. Anyway, Pat King, 47, is the first leader of the protest to learn of his verdict. 2 others, Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, will learn the outcome of their trials within the next 6 months. Even Chris Sky and Jeremy McKenzie and countless others, lawfare against these individuals and rights and freedoms taken away. The Canadian Bill of Rights was literally shit on by so many levels of government and people that were so misinformed and caused harm to Canadians. And this is why they're still in their positions, or they've shifted their cabinet positions and stuff like that, or the higher levels of the the government and like the military, RCMP, Ottawa Police Services, etc. These people are not stepping down, because as soon as they do, I'm hoping they get investigated and jailed because you're not above the law. You're supposed to be upholding the law. It's just ridiculous to me. But anyway, a judge in an Ottawa courtroom on Friday found King guilty on 5 counts, including 1 count each of mischief, counseling others to commit mischief, and counseling others to obstruct police. Pat, who had led a convoy of lorries in Ottawa in protest of COVID-19 measures and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government, had pleaded not guilty. King was also found guilty of 2 counts of disobeying a court order, but the judge did not find him guilty of 2 other charges he faced: intimidation and obstructing police. Estimates made prior to the trial suggested that King could face up to 10 years in prison. Lawyers for King argued during his trial that he was part of a peaceful protest against public health restrictions and government mandates, and I would say overreach, absolutely, and unlawful, and that police were to blame for rising tensions during the demonstrations. Crown prosecutors, however, argued that King was a key figure of a protest that had disrupted and harmed the residents and workers of downtown Ottawa for weeks. They detailed one instance where King allegedly helped move 80 lorries to block a major street in the city, and another where he allegedly instructed protesters to honk their horns every 30 minutes. Organizers of the Freedom Convoy included Ms. Leach and Mr. Barber are also facing $300 million civil lawsuit brought against them by Ottawa residents over the disruptions they caused in the city. This is hilarious. You've got people like Taggart that are literally shredding trees on protected sites, heritage sites, religious sites, national parks, etc., and completely disseminating our heritage and wasting the resources and again obstructing people within areas, causing damage to people's homes, making people flee, and then also targeting and harassing them in some cases as well. Again, I know this personally. No one does anything about that. Literally no law enforcement. I had called cops multiple times. I had videos, I had photos, I had proof, I had witnesses. All this stuff did fucking nothing. Did nothing. And yet, look at this. Oh, I just get so fired up sometimes. But anyway. Oh, And yeah, and so in Toronto, there was pro-Hamas, whatever you want to call it, whatever side you may be on what's going on in Israel and Palestine. I talk about this at length, and I share proof of what's actually happening and what has happened there. And so this is not even about that. Again, I'm saying that these are means to usher in some kind of societal collapse and division and chaos from within, keep us distracted and divided, because then we're not seeing what's actually going on and who's running us into the fucking ground. They're still getting paid by us to do it. Anyway, so these people were protesting not too long ago, several months ago, and they literally disrupted Toronto highways. And again, the busiest highways in the world is Toronto. And so look that up. Block that. Freedom Convoy people did not do that. They did that. Cops, what did they do? They delivered coffee and donuts supporting this. So this is what I mean, the hypocrisy in this. And how do you not understand that people are seeing you as a threat to our nation? Because if things further escalate like they are doing, right, then we don't trust that you are going to have our best interest at heart, that you're just going to blindly obey some kind of a dictator, possibly, or authoritarian regime, and whether you understand it or not. And people are afraid of that. People I talk to on a regular basis are afraid because of the overreach, especially like during COVID. Yeah. The protest received international attention and inspired similar copycat demonstrations abroad. So there was even people that were considered honeypots, and look at the Coots trials, that there were people trying to get people to commit crimes or bait them into doing it. And it didn't work, but they still tried. And these people were in jail for years. And I'm assuming over $1 million in court fees, and lives completely impacted and destroyed. But again, what were these? These were honeypot types within fucking RCMP and law enforcement in Alberta. And they, because people were trying to peacefully demonstrate and protest, whatever you want to call it, they were targeted. And there was people from within government that were targeting, like I was saying, veterans, especially military and law enforcement, and getting them organizing these meetings and stuff like that, and sometimes they were wearing a wire, sometimes not, sometimes they didn't have their phones on, any of that stuff, but anyways, they were trying to get people to commit crimes, and it's ridiculous. And I was warning a lot of people within my network, and it's hard to believe, but it's true. And I'm trying to remember his name, but that friggin' kid that is part of Vice News, I'm forgetting his name, but it was only because of access to information requests that we were able to figure out that CSIS, the heads of CSIS, were taking articles from an extreme leftist, and that's where they were, and that's why they were saying that they were that there was terrorist organizations and terrorist activities and all this other stuff, and considering it to be like more of a threat situation than it actually was. And again, it was because of this guy from friggin' Vice News, and I'm forgetting his friggin' names, but I have videos on it and him. And again, it's based on a tweet and an article. And this is how they came up with their intelligence gathering assessments. Are you fucking kidding me? When people like me were literally emailing them personally, their CSIS friggin' hotline, basically giving them so much information, and never a follow up. It's it's very frustrating. What was his friggin' name? Anyway, it'll come to me at some point. And also CBC news articles as well. And so this guy's, but what he has shared, like especially his Vice News articles, it's so extreme leftist, and with no proof or evidence of anything, and just false allegations. And I hope that people like Jeremy McKenzie sue this guy for defamation of character or slander or whatever he can possibly do. Because again, we have multiple emails, we have the threat assessments, we have the reports from CSIS that had to be published because again, access to information request put in, you have to give it. And just like how they came to their conclusions, just mind blowing. And people like Helen Grew suspended on that first weekend, and other people I know as well that I won't name, and they were trying to make this peaceful as well. They knew that there was people within the government that were trying to create riots and tensions. Even Marco Mendicino and David Lametti were joking about employing tanks on innocent civilians. Ridiculous. ridiculous. These guys, oh my God, zero security experience at all. And then Brian Fox, head of enterprise, possibly being the one that was wearing the balaclava and holding up that Nazi flag or whatever you want to call it. And again, Justin Trudeau's photographer was surrounding him. There was RCMP and other law enforcement that were around him, and a bunch of photo ops. And again, I was saying he's a role player. Okay, he's literally playing a role, literally playing a role. And then even with the war monument and Terry Fox statues being desecrated, these are all people that are paid, that are government, that are paid to do this. There's drunken, disorderly scenarios as well, and targeting homeless people. You know, it's ridiculous. The lengths. And then even Bill Blair. Again, I'm going on all these tangents, but in 2014 during the G20 summit in Toronto, he was the chief of police, and also again using government assets to harass and arrest innocent civilians, people even going into their own apartment residences and getting picked up and being interrogated for hours in in fucking cage-like areas, not even at precincts, and then canalized into to areas for hours, even though it was freezing apparently, and then arrested and for no reason, pushed into areas, people that were not even involved in any protest at all, and again peaceful. And then even the burning of that police car that on the road for hours, and these photo ops that they got. That is not the response. I've shared that footage with people that I know in law enforcement and really high up in the fire departments all over Canada. And they're like, that's not an appropriate response to a burning vehicle. That's not we don't leave it, for hours. And anyway, sorry, I'm a little cold. I have the window open because I was smoking a cigar and I'm getting a little chilly. Anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, just and January 6th, oh my God, again, with Ray Epps and David Lazarus and Harry Dunn and countless others that were staging and planning events. And Ashley may possibly still be alive. I've shared the footage from within for that whole period and more, and identified multiple other crisis actors and role players that were also there. And yeah, it's hilarious. It's not hilarious, but anyways. Back to the video. Sorry for that tangent.
In retrospect, it's easy to say that I should have done more investigation, but what investigation would you have done in my shoes?
I think right. I think it's important to do due diligence, and you have significant following on social media platforms where misinformation can spread.
Oh my God, no, I'm not over my tangent. No, Russian disinformation. So the ghost of Kiev, fake news. Multiple people within government, Canadian government, spread that shit. Snake Island, apparently Ukrainian soldiers died on Snake Island at the hands of Russia. Fake news. And I shared that within hours that this was fake news. And people even days and weeks afterwards within our cabinet, Canadian freaking government, were sharing that misinformation still. Polish farmers dying because of a missile strike. This was Ukrainian air defense. I again was sharing that information within hours. This is not a brag or anything like that, but this is just to show you that people like myself are getting censored, and this lady, and then people within government, but that have been spreading disinformation and misinformation that's causing wars and escalations of tensions at the very least. They're getting away with it, and we're correcting them peacefully and politely as we can online, and it's not even being acknowledged, and it's or taken down, including Melanie Joly and Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, Bill Blair. These people should know, and they don't. And then even the CDS at the time went air. But anyways, and Brenda Lucky, so much misinformation at the highest friggin' levels, and it's open source information, which is ridiculous. And so yeah, Polish farmers, it was Ukrainian air defense, not Russia. Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2, NATO and assets, but Ukrainian assets, not Russia. I mean, I could go on. And these false rape allegations is again, people, this doesn't make me a pro-Russian propagandist. I'm just sharing that fact that there's a lot of misleading information that they're sharing, and they're not in the seat that she's in, and they should be.
Wrap rapidly. How do you ensure that the content you share is not used by foreign entities to amplify narratives that undermine Canadian democracy or national security?
How do you ensure that the content you produce isn't going to be used by some other kind of entity to spread, or use it for their own agenda? She has nothing to do with that. This is absolutely insane. She just said, I can't help what people are going to do. This is absolutely crazy. But she gives even better answers than I do. Listen.
Are you accusing me of spreading narratives that have undermined
I'm just asking
democracy?
the question, just in terms of how do you ensure that the content you share is not used by foreign entities to amplify narratives that undermine Canadian democracy or national security? What measures do you take?
I ensure that every contract I sign and have ever signed in media gives me full creative control of every single thing I say and publish.
Good answer. If she has full 100% creative control of every single thing she says, then it doesn't matter what anybody does with the content. In fact, she would want anybody to share the content in any type of way, because it's all about spreading the info as far and wide as possible when you're putting out, your piece. So this is just crazy.
That's how I ensure it.
Good answer.
There's concerns that individuals or groups may be unintentionally aiding foreign governments in spreading divisive narratives. How do you respond to allegations that your online content has been used to further Russian propaganda or influence Canadian public opinion?
This has nothing to do with me.
As far as I'm aware, just this month,
this is a brilliant
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a pause to immigration, or a decrease in immigration for the next 3 years, citing unsustainable growth. This is one of the critiques that has been my main critique on tenant media and off tenant media. And having it portrayed as Russian disinformation by this committee, or even aiding and abetting Russians, has been very interesting. I may understand I may have been right too early on this issue, and as so I must be socially punished by this regime. But although much too late, I happen to believe that Justin Trudeau is making the correct decision there. And I would hope that this committee wouldn't advocate Canadians stop drinking water or wearing seatbelts because someone with the last name Ivanov or Petrov suggested it was a good idea.
Wow, absolutely brilliant. She's like, you're going to grill me on all this stuff that I've been saying, and you're saying that Russians can use it as disinformation. And now Justin Trudeau is coming out saying he made major mistakes on immigration. He had it wrong. What is that? Russian disinformation as well?
That's not what we're asking. But
Oh,
what
that's
is your
not what we're
stance on
talking
foreign
about.
interference in Canadian elections and political discourse? Do you believe there is a clear and present danger from foreign actors such as Russia? And if so, what responsibility do individuals like yourself bear in preventing the spread of foreign influence? Do you take
I was
any
a
responsibility?
commentator for a channel who had full control over the videos I made, and I ensured they were truthful. If you want to point to anything I've said that has been disinformation or aiding and
I'm
abetting,
actually asking what you believe. Do you believe there's a clear and present danger from foreign actors such as Russia? And if so, what responsibility do you believe the individuals like yourself and your platform aid in preventing the spread of foreign influence?
I think that it is rich that I am sat here and being asked what I have to do to stop foreign influence and foreign interference. As a Canadian citizen, well, we sit here with MPs like Jennifer O'Connell, who said boo-hoo to Conservatives who wanted actual elected politicians working with foreign governments to be exposed. I am a regular Canadian.
So sorry, I take it you don't take responsibility. I'm sorry, it's not your turn, Ms. O'Connell. I'm going to continue. How do you reconcile your business model, which prioritizes user engagement and raking in massive profits from clicks, with the necessity to protect users from harmful disinformation that can lead to real-world consequences like hate-based violence?
How is anyone in this committee supposed to stop disinformation abroad if they can't stop it within this committee? Why wasn't Ben Scott, why wasn't he challenged when he cited false numbers about Tenet's views? Why wasn't he challenged when it was said that Tenet created the top podcast in the world, that they were getting billions of impressions? If we cannot stop disinformation within this committee, I'm sorry, but no one here is stopping disinformation coming from abroad or foreign interference.
What effects do you believe your content has on Canadians?
I think I speak for the majority of Canadians. I think I speak for people who don't have a voice in this government. I think I speak for people who feel they have been censored and shut up for too long by the mainstream media, and I'm proud of it.
Good for her.
And I'm glad we're talking about how you personally feel. Can you speak about how you feel about your online content, since it was aiding in objectives that were planned, plotted, and executed in the Kremlin?
Would you say that Justin Trudeau's reduction of immigration was aiding and abetting
Brilliant.
the Kremlin? Should he be pulled here because he had the same ideas
Just asking
that I
you.
had?
I'm asking you, do you have any personal feelings that your online content was aiding in those objectives?
I do not. I disagree with that. I think I have very normal opinions that were all coming from myself. No one told me to have my views. No one forced me to have my opinions. My opinions are based on
I'll ask
living
you
and
about
growing
that.
up in this
Okay.
country.
Okay. Have you ever been in direct or indirect contact with Russian government officials, organizations, or agents?
It's just ridiculous what this
I've
guy's
spoken to RT before in the past.
absolutely
Okay.
insane. You can see how this is pretty much going to continue. He continues with the same line of questioning along the lines of like, have you done anything to mitigate against the fact that you are being used here? When she isn't even. The whole thing is a big giant nothing burger. Now, let me share with you one of the most craziest ones, because this lady literally accuses her of trying to attack the Jews. Watch this. This is wild.
Several interviews there. Were you paid for those interviews?
I was not paid to do any of those interviews.
So I mean, it's come up who you interviewed while you were there, Alexander Dugin, who not only has been referred to as Vladimir Putin's brain. Actually, before I ask you this, how did you get an interview with him?
I watched an episode of The Agenda with Steve Piken, where he interviewed Alexander Dugin, and then at a either earlier or later date, he also interviewed a translator of Dugin's, who was a University of Toronto PhD student. And I contacted either him or one of his translators and got his email and said, "Mr. Dugin, could I conduct an interview with you?" And in a very brief response, he just said yes.
So I just want to read, in 2014, Dugin said Russia should, quote, kill Ukrainians. He's previously been involved with Pomyat, which has been described as the most significant anti-Semitic organization.
She's so smug. This Karen, oh my God. It's so frustrating because people can interview, I guess, anyone they want. Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin. There are multiple people in Canada, including our government, that works with Russians. Believe it or not, shocker, spoiler alert. And there's Russians in Canada. Oh my God, they're not evil people, ladies and gentlemen. And these people I'm talking about, there are evil people all over the world. But so she's trying to say that essentially because of what this guy has said in the past or done in the past, she's like trying to make correlations or associations or links to her. It's absolutely disgusting.
Since perestroika.
So typical.
He's expressed his admiration for the SS, adopting the alter ego
low IQ.
named Hans Sievers, named after the war criminal, who was general secretary of a Nazi research institute that Heinrich Himmler established. I'm just curious. I know you've mentioned Steve Piken a number of
Didn't cabinet invite an actual Nazi and give him a standing ovation in Parliament? I think that happened. Yeah.
times, and I had limited time to look here, slightly different than the interview that you did. I'll just be honest. Why would you want to platform someone like that?
She's like, why would you want to platform someone who has been quoted as saying, kill the Ukrainians, kind of alluding to trying to suggest, is this what you're trying to promote? Is this the kind of material you want to get out there?
The exact same reason Steve Piken did and TVO did, because he is an interesting geopolitical figure, and I was more right than I bargained for initially at how interesting he would get. When I watched the TVO interview and when I watched the work of Michael Millerman, one of his translators, they kind of figured these ideas of
Do you agree with his views on Ukraine?
No. I don't think we should kill the Ukrainians. On the contrary, I think we should be trying to not kill anybody. Not a big fan of killing people, Ukrainian or otherwise.
And do you prescribe to his anti-Semitic views?
No. Once again, you're interviewing me right now. Do you agree with all of my opinions?
Good answer.
No, I actually find some of them quite offensive. I'm just
mad she's
curious what a
getting.
Canadian language is. Is that Ojibwe and Cree? Typically
in Canada, our national languages are English and French. I kind of figured this was common knowledge in here, but
Totally schooling these
Okay.
people. Got
Well, I guess, it's funny. I was just in the Baltic countries and met with the NATO Center of Excellence on Strategic Communications. And a lot of what you
Again with the NATO School of Excellence. Okay, NATO keeps getting it wrong too, ladies and gentlemen, and also enabling proxy wars and such. And so I wouldn't. It's not really a brag in the higher level security industry groups.
put out aligns
I
perfectly.
have their doctrine too. I have like the PAM, whatever you want to call it. And again, it is what it is.
With
Nothing special.
the type of Russian misinformation that I heard about, particularly around immigration. But anyway, that's just a comment. You have been
Look at this lady.
you keep referring to Steve Paikin and the fact that he did an interview with someone. You went to Russia, if I'm not mistaken, you were barred from going to the UK, is that correct?
yes, I was barred from going to the UK.
And why was that?
That was because I tried to set up a pride parade in Luton, and the Islamic population there typically are not a big fan of that. And I was told that it was stirring up hatred.
And so you went to Russia to stir up hatred against Jews?
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. What
This girl
what are
is
you referring to?
deluded.
I like how she couldn't help herself but break
Oh
out
my
in
God.
laughter. Like, what did you just say? I went to Russia to stir up hatred against the Jews? Like, what is this for real? Are these people for real?
Look who you deliberately made a trip to Russia to interview someone who is one of the most anti-Semitic people around. Is it just to be controversial? Is that, do you find that funny?
What part? Yeah, I do find it funny that you were accusing me of taking a trip to Russia to stir up hatred around Jews when I don't think Jews came up once during my interview with Alexander Dugin. I don't know where you're getting that from. And once again, Steve Paikin conducted an interview with him. I guess you would have to
Ms.
make the same anti-Semitic accusation against TVO.
Ms.
Oh,
Southern, his
yep.
views are well known, and you deliberately went there, so you're basically trying to create chaos. Funny thing is,
Oh my God.
that's what they say Russia does with all the things that they do, is try to create chaos in society.
That's
So
some mental
it
gymnastics,
sounds like
twisting
your
it all
goal
there.
is to try and create chaos, and I don't get the sense that you have a lot of respect for Western liberal democracy
wow.
as it is. So anyway, that's my
irony.
time, Chair.
She wants to have the last word.
yeah.
She's like, you know what? You don't respect anything. I think you just went there to cause trouble. You just want to. You hate the Jews, and I'm just going to leave it at that. What an absolute psycho! And I'm so glad Lauren handled that in the way she did, just laughing off this complete moron.
Taxpayer money.
Now, check out this part here where Lauren's asked about, if she's ever been contacted by agents. And this is where things get very, very interesting and revealing. Check this out.
Psychological pressure on me to become an informant on this subject.
Right.
The RCMP or CSIS or
This is
any
wild,
type of
guys.
security service that you met further to that?
So I have not been asked to reimburse any of that money, but I have been visited by CSIS, who quite frankly have been putting immense psychological pressure on me to become an informant on this subject and other subjects. Ultimately, I declined because I'm not looking to become an asset for foreign governments nor this government. And I did not like the way in which they threatened and stalked me. And I would like to know how much Canadians paid for that, by the way.
She was threatened and stalked by CSIS for refusing to become an informant. That is massive. She gets into it in a little bit more detail. I believe it's somewhere right around here. Let me see.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Motz. Ms.
CSIS
A Canadian or American law enforcement about your role in the Russian-run tenant media
Listen closely,
given
guys.
the
This is wild.
U.S. indictment?
Yes, as I mentioned, CSIS came to my house while I was making dinner for my child and tried to speak with me, but did so in a way that I was not
Oh my God. Okay. Justin Ling. That's who I wanted to say. That this is who CSIS and the highest levels of government who they used to make a threat assessment during the Freedom Convoy. Justin Ling Vice News, works with leftist government-funded media, like I keep reiterating, and again, the access to information reports that I shared, it's and then contact me if you want hard copies or emails.
With
Ridiculous.
and I have also, quite frankly, experienced quite a bit of harassment and stalking from them. When I told them I did not want to speak, they called me dozens and dozens of times. They found my gym. They told me that if I did not essentially become an informant for them, that I love being a mother, I love my child, and I would love to see him grow up and be there to provide for him, and it would be a shame if something happened to me. So I'm not too impressed with the state of law enforcement in this country right now, to be honest.
Guys, this is serious, serious stuff. Just for speaking her opinion and being accused of being used as some sort of Russian disinformation agent, she had CSIS agents show up at her house, stalk her at her gym, threaten her with potential, violence, and harass her with, multiple phone calls and visits. This is over somebody who has maintained integrity, who has stayed true to her principles, and who has not sold out by signing a contract that would hand over any kind of creative control. So what the heck are these guys doing? What they're doing here is trying to see if they can get her to join the dark side. But thankfully, she made the right call and rejected CSIS's offer to become an informant. But this just goes to show how wild things are getting for the field of independent media here in Canada. You got like Lauren Southern being indicted by the DOJ, being interrogated by this parliamentary committee on public safety and national security. And it's like a huge, giant, nothing burger witch hunt, which I would have to agree with Viva Frei, who the reason why I showed you this is because I think he said it well. It's a must watch, not because it's an Orwellian Kafkaesque nightmare, but because it highlights how utterly stupid, corrupt, and incompetent our elected officials are. Like, they're truly stupid, truly
that was
the
an
bottom of the
embarrassment to
barrel,
the government.
unintelligent,
Not her.
lazy bureaucrats. And again, she absolutely proved it in this fantastic video. So just wanted to bring that one to your attention, guys. Let me know. Do you think she did a good job? I mean,
yeah, I think she did a good job. It's unfortunate that it had to get to that level. I don't know why she didn't want to work with CSIS and to be an informant. I would. I've given them information. I've offered my services and stuff like that, and I've worked with them in the past. But just because I'm sharing online, it's and because of not being vaccinated as well at one point, that was a concern. This is already a long video, but I wanted to share this. Jimmy Dore gets it really close. So, mind-blowing story behind Matt Gaetz' sex allegations with Ian Carroll. This is where we're going to get into Bannon and Epstein and countless others, and then go down that rabbit hole and see those connections and the conversations that Bannon and Epstein had in 2017, and possible connections with him and of Epstein, deep state cover-ups.
Behind the sexual charge of Matt Gaetz, right? So Matt Gaetz doesn't take the donor money. He's not funded by Israel. He's an actual reformer. He's an outlier inside the Republican Party, and so they try to get rid of him. And what are the first thing you do is you launch a sexual misconduct charge. And so this woman, Mel, Village Crazy Lady, on Twitter, this is quite the story. So, all right, friends, now that Matt Gaetz is out of the running, you're going to hear a lot of takes on what's happening and plenty of keep your D in your pants. And that's always good advice. The story I'm about to share goes way beyond anything you could possibly imagine. So if you're interested in the whole story consolidated in one place of what really happened with and to Gaetz, take a seat and let me tell you a story. So story begins in the fall of 2019 in Florida with this man, Joel Greenberg. At the time, Joel Greenberg was 2.5 years, 2.5 years into his first term as the tax collector for Seminole County. So I'm just going to jump to the end, and then I'll fill in the. This guy is also in charge of issuing driver's licenses in Florida. And so he issued driver's licenses to 17-year-old girls saying that they were 18, 19, 20 years old, and then said that Matt Gaetz had sex with one of those, but even though he was doing that. So here's the rest of the story. Greenberg is your classic rich kid who drinks through life, lighting fires everyone else is forced to put out, never landing hard because daddy's money always catches his fall. You know the type. We all do. And Joel approaches his role as tax collector no different than any other. By fall 2019, Seminole County was awash with rumors about the federal investigation into Greenberg's crypto scam with tax collector dollars. These rumors inspired a local music teacher, Brian Butte, to throw his hat into the ring and challenge Greenberg in the Republican primary slated for the following year. Despite the many advantages Greenberg held over Butte in the race, incumbency, wealth, name recognition, etc., Greenberg's significant criminal activity as tax collector likely contributed to him becoming obsessed with destroying Butte, both publicly and privately. So this guy is the criminal, and he's being challenged by Butte, and he decides to try to destroy the guy because he knows he has a criminal this guy has a criminal background. So throughout late 2019 and into 2020, Greenberg rolled out a series of ever-escalating smear tactics targeting Butte. They started rather typical, labeling Butte, who is from Michigan, as a carpetbagger, but they grew increasingly vicious. He created fake Facebook profiles pretending to be Butte's students, leaving comments on public posts trashing Butte as an awful teacher and a pervert. Last year, the page posted an attack on Greenberg's primary opponent titled Creepy Brian Butte. The stalking charge against Greenberg alleges that he used a pseudonym to send letters to the middle school where Butte is a teacher, falsely claiming that Butte had a sexual relationship with a student. Greenberg allegedly set up fake Facebook page making the same charge and set up a fake Twitter account in Butte's name promoting white supremacy. So this guy was going all out. Okay, this all comes back to Matt Gaetz. This is all going to come back to Matt Gaetz. Greenberg's antics finally reached an apex when he mailed handwritten letters to the administration at the school where Butte taught, accusing him of sexually assaulting the students. Greenberg probably didn't expect those letters to be taken so seriously, or else he would have likely been a little more careful. But at last he was not. And when the letters were turned over to the local sheriff's office, both his fingerprints and his DNA were lifted from those letters, and he was arrested on June 23rd, 2020, and charged by the Department of Justice with stalking. At the time of this arrest, Greenberg's phone was confiscated and searched, and believe it or not, this is where his real legal troubles began. On his cell phone and later home computers, police found evidence of Greenberg committing damn near every crime in the book. Drugs, prostitution, identity theft, wire fraud, crypto market manipulation.
Yep.
But the silver tuna was a series of messages that occurred in the late spring through early fall 2017 between Greenberg and then 17-year-old girl discussing, among other things, their many sexcapades around Florida and beyond. Further investigation revealed that from December 26 through December 2018, Joel Greenberg was a customer on a sugar daddy website where he solicited various women for sex and escort services. This is where he met the aforementioned 17-year-old girl. One of the individuals Greenberg paid for commercial sex acts was a minor under the age of 18 for part-time when Greenberg paid her to engage in commercial sex acts with him and others. referred to herein as the minor. Greenberg met the minor over the internet on the website. The minor had an account on the website in which the minor represented that she was an adult. All told, Mr. Greenberg spent 70 grand on hookers he met on the Sugar Daddy website, much of which he paid for with the government-issued American Express card.
Jesus.
He had an online account at a
Wow.
website that advertised itself as a place where sugar daddies could find sugar babies.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Greenberg used at least 4 accounts to pay for commercial sex acts: his personal Venmo account, his personal American Express account, his American Express account at the tax collector's office, and his personal Fifth Third bank account. From December 2016 to December 2018, Greenberg used those accounts to conduct more than 150 financial transactions totaling over 70 grand, all of which involved Greenberg paying women for commercial sex acts using those accounts. This all comes back to Matt Gaetz. In August 2020, the Department of Justice charged Greenberg with sex trafficking of a minor, identity theft, and production of false identification documents, among other things. Turns out in Florida, the Office of County Tax Collector doesn't just collect taxes, they also issue driver licenses and state IDs. And Mr. Greenberg had taken full advantage of this privilege during his time in office. Greenberg had not only created multiple false Florida ID cards for himself, he also created a fake ID for his underage lover after finding out that she had been lying to him about her age. It says right there, they discovered evidence that Mr. Greenberg, whose job responsibilities included issuing licenses, was creating fake identification cards for himself and a teenage girl. And this is where Matt Gaetz comes into the story. So there's Greenberg, and there's Matt Gaetz, and there's Roger Stone.
Mm.
From what I can gather, Gaetz and Greenberg became acquainted at some point.
Another reason why I'm like, there's a lot of things about him that I agree with what he shares, but a lot of it is misinformation as well. And I think he might be an asset.
In the first half of
Who might be blackmailed and bribed.
2017, the first public record of them associated on a private level comes from this picture posted on Twitter on July 8th, 2017, with none other than Roger Stone. I think it's safe to say that the two did become friends. How good of friends, that's up for debate, but there was a relationship. Okay. After getting arrested in June 2020, at some point, Mr. Greenberg, lawyer, approaches Bill Barr's Department of Justice with a proposition. He claims he can provide evidence that a sitting congressman, Matt Gaetz, had engaged in sex acts with a minor. Bill Barr's so this is Greenberg trying to get a deal for himself. So Bill Barr's Department of Justice then proceeds to open a secret investigation into these allegations that remains a secret until it's leaked the next spring on March 30th, 2021 by the New York Times. Wonder why? But this is the same Matt Gaetz that says Bill Barr was in on the Jeffrey Epstein murder. That's the same. So do you see what's happening? Part 3, the man in Iran. Listen to this. Faithful viewers of Tucker Carlson were treated to a peek behind the DC curtain on a random Tuesday night in late March 2021. Do you remember this when Matt Gaetz was when this leaked? Matt Gaetz goes on Tucker Carlson and he tells this what seemed like a bizarre story of his father-in-law being extorted for $25 million. Remember that? And everybody thought like Matt Gaetz seems crazy.
Yeah.
But here's the story. Earlier that day, the New York Times had released a bombshell story alleging that the Department of Justice had opened an official investigation into Matt Gaetz over allegations he had engaged in sex with an underage girl. Following Tucker's opening monologue, he introduced Matt Gaetz and gave him free rein to tell his side of the story. Anyone watching is unlikely to soon forget the absolute bizarre story that Gaetz proceeded to tell. It involved a $25 million extortion threat against his father. Oh, sorry, not his father-in-law. His father to help free an American hostage in Iran. What? That would then be paid back with a presidential pardon for Gates on all these sex charges. What? Gates demanded that the FBI release the tapes they had in their possession of the recordings made by his father in interviews with his extortionists. He didn't hesitate for a second to name the alleged extortionist. The name was David McGee. He said he was a former prosecutor for the Northern District of Florida who now worked at the prestigious Biggs and Lane law firm in Pensacola. There's that guy. That's the guy who was trying to extort $25 million out of Matt Gaetz's father that they were then going to use to get this guy out of Iran. But then the president would pay that back by giving him a pardon for the sex crimes that they're ginning up against him. You see how this works? Okay. He was resolute and unafraid when talking, and yet he sounded like an absolute lunatic. I know. I was watching live. I wasn't the only one. I know. Me too. Tucker was clearly extremely annoyed and unconvinced by the end, and yet 3.5 years later, I know now that everything Matt Gaetz said was true. Bob Levinson was the man in Iran, this guy Bob Levinson. The official story about Bob Levinson is that he was a retired FBI agent who was contracted by a semi-off-the-book CIA unit to run covert operations in Iran. He was kidnapped from Kish Island following a meeting with an American fugitive living in Iran that had been arranged by former NBC producer named Ira Silverman. This thread is already long enough, so I'm not going to speculate on what I think, but there's plenty out there if you want to go chasing rabbits. So Levinson gets kidnapped in March 2007, and his disappearance was acknowledged by George Bush in June of 2007 as concerning. But no one from the federal government will admit that Levinson was working for the CIA. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, from 2009 to 2011, the FBI was running its own covert operation to get their retired agent back. And they had devised an ingenious plan to keep the whole thing off the books. They contracted with a Russian billionaire, Oleg Deripaska, to pay for the rescue mission, $20 million in total, in exchange for a fast-tracked green card for Deripaska and his family. You see how this all works? It's amazing. Enter David McGee. During his time at the Department of Justice, McGee worked as an organized crime task force. That's how he knew Bob Levinson, who specialized in Russian money laundering. McGee became a liaison between the Levinson family and Deripaska. See this? Now let me just step right here and say this whole thing is nuts and stinks to high heaven. To make matters worse, who was the FBI point man for the Deripaska deal? Andrew McCabe. Yes, that Andrew McCabe. You know, the one from the FBI who got caught with his text messages and lying about all that stuff. And the Russiagate, the Russiagate guy. Anyway, the FBI team gets a couple proof of live videos, meaning that Levinson's still alive, and they have a soft arranged in place when the Clinton State Department steps in and shuts the whole thing down. Something got them spooked, and it's never been disclosed what it was. But after 2011, Levinson is never heard from again. All along, the Iranians deny any involvement in his disappearance. So eventually the CIA gets desperate, and a handful of classified documents confirming Levinson's contact with the CIA are leaked to the AP in December 2012. Still, the Iranians don't budge. This was surprising because at this point, they no longer have any reason to lie. The Americans weren't lying anymore. Time to start negotiations. But nope, the news was greeted with radio silence. Years go by, and no more pictures or videos ever arrive. And then comes the Iranian nuclear deal of 2016. Unbeknownst to most, the Obama team had negotiated the release of 4 Americans being held in Iran in exchange for the U.S. dropping charges against 7 Iranian nationals for sanctions violations. Bob Levinson was not one of those Americans. The American Jewish community was furious. They already saw the Iranian deal as a stab in the back to Israel, but when the word broke about the prisoner exchange and Bob Levinson wasn't on the list, many took it as a deliberate betrayal of American Jews too. Fast forward some more. Trump takes office, cancels the nuclear deal. Christine Levinson sues Iran in U.S. courts and is awarded $1.2 billion judgment in January 2020. And in March 2020, the U.S. government declares Bob Levinson legally dead. Case closed, right? Wrong. At some point in the summer of 2020, a former Air Force intelligence officer named Bob Kent claims to have received news from his network in Iraq, alleging that Bob Levinson was still alive. Kent even claims he received pictures to prove it. So Kent contacts David McGee, who then tells Kent about the last privately funded search and rescue for Levinson. And that's when Kent hatches the plan to rope Don Gates into paying for this. So Matt Gates' father into paying for the new rescue mission. So now I know what you are all wondering. How did these men know about the Matt Gaetz investigation? How did all these people know that the Department of Justice was investigating Matt Gaetz? To my knowledge, that has never been revealed. If I had to guess, I'd say someone in the Department of Justice or FBI leaked that info to McGee, who then told Kent about it when he was contacted. But that's still only have the that's not okay. This is the part of the story where I start spiraling. I start wondering just how long this plan had been in the works. Nothing adds up, but for now, I'll spare you my suspicions and stick to what I know. Part 3, the grand plan. In March 16, 2021, when Don Gates, Matt Gaetz' father, receives the first text message from Bob Kent about his grand plan. In exchange for Don fronting Mr. Kent's rescue mission of Bob Levinson, unnamed agents with a powerful contact in the Biden administration would convince the president to give Don's son, Matt Gaetz, a full presidential pardon on his looming sex trafficking charges. The price, $25 million. I wish I had a picture of Don Gates' face when he read that. You're going to have to pay us $25 million. Naturally, Gates Sr. was incredulous. What in the world was this man talking about? Matt wasn't facing any sex trafficking charges. Don called Matt, who immediately told him to contact the local FBI office. The FBI suggested that Don meet with David McGee wearing a wire, and Don agreed. However, just before the meeting took place, Don requested a written acknowledgement from the FBI on the purpose of this investigation and meeting. He was worried something he said could be used against Matt in the case they still didn't know anything about. The FBI was reluctant at first, but they eventually agreed. The very next day, the New York Times ran the leak on the Department of Justice case against Gates. There it is. Going back and watching the Tucker Gates interview again this week, everything he said finally made sense. The FBI had planned to use Don's meeting with McGee against Matt. The quasi-immunity demand from Don quashed that, so they leaked the story to the New York Times and then buried the wiretapes. McGee and Kent denied everything. They said there was no extortion. It was a simple proposition. They accused Matt of using this to distract from his charges. Oh, really? Then why'd they just, where's the wiretap then? Where is it? Former Air Force intelligence officer accused of trying to extort Matt Gaetz breaks silence to admit he did ask Congressman's father for $25 million, but says it was to rescue an American hostage, Robert Levinson, in Iran.
Sure.
But wait, there's more. Because this story wasn't already weird enough, here's another twist. So at the same time that Don Gaetz was getting those messages from Kent and McGee, Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, he receives a message from an acquaintance of his named Jacob Novak, who works as the media director for the Israeli consulate. The first one arrives the Saturday before the story breaks. Here's the first one. It says, "Scoop, I can't report. Representative Gates is the subject of a secret grand jury probe of sex with minors and possibly murder conspiracy. I trust the source. Charges, accusations apparently very credible." This is to Scott. What? This is amazing, right? The next two arrived on Wednesday, the 31st, after Getz went on Tucker and revealed David McGee's name to the world. "I don't want to believe him, but my sources said it looks bad from closer in. I'm betting against it, but the extortion counterclaim sounds credible. Has witnesses, apparently. The backstory is this is screwing up my efforts to free Bob Levinson. Gates' dad was secretly finding us. Or finding us? I'm going to say. So I'm very much wanting this to be untrue. I've got a commando team leader friend of mine nervously waiting for wire transfers to clear. They have documents. Yes, some numbers and facts have been altered. The real documents do not extort, and we only asked for $25 million as an estimate at first. We came way down." To his credit, the whole thing was sketchy as hell to Scott Adams, so he took it upon himself to release Novak's messages. The Israeli consulate immediately distanced themselves from Novak's messages, but he was not fired or disciplined. Okay. There's only one more slide. Here's the wrap up. So Joel Greenberg pled guilty. You remember the guy, the tax collector who had the paying all the women for sex on sugardaddy.com and issuing fake licenses to underage girls saying they were of age? Joel Greenberg, he pled guilty to sex trafficking, identity fraud, wire fraud, and a host of other charges in May of 2021. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and 10 of those years are coming from the mandatory minimum imposed by the sex trafficking charge. The Department of Justice did not close its case against Matt Gaetz until October of 2022. They never publicly acknowledged why he was not charged, although it becomes fairly obvious once you learn that Joel Greenberg had produced fake IDs for the underage girl in question. How can you convict someone of statutory rape when this woman was using a real state Florida driver's license to present as being of age? So, of course, because it's the swamp, that's not where Matt's troubles ended. So what it looks like to me, Ian, is that maybe Matt Gaetz did have some kind of sex with an underage girl, but that he was set up by this Greenberg because he gave the underage girl a fake ID that it's a real ID. It wasn't fake. It was a real ID that said she was of age. So that complicates the process. That's why they can't prosecute. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. I mean, this story is so crazy, and I saw it pass through my Twitter feed, and I saved it and didn't have time to read through it all. So I'm super glad that you just did.
So there's just
that's like,
go ahead.
Yeah. Finish it up.
Let me just finish it. So, but of course, because it's the swamp, that's not where Matt's troubles ended. The snakes in D.C. were going to milk that investigation for all it's worth. And when Gaetz went for McCarthy during the speaker fight, McCarthy and his allies plotted carefully to get their revenge. So now they got this over him. So this guy's a wild card, just like they would do to Bernie. And the FBI threatened to prosecute his wife, allegedly. Just like that's just how they control everybody, right? That's why they have P. Diddy parties. No. That's why they have Jeffrey Epstein. So we saw the culmination of that plotting on full display today. There are still lots of unanswered questions. Who is the we that Jacob Novak referenced in his text to Scott Adams? Who leaked that info about the Gaetz case to Bob Kent? Was Joel Greenberg running a honeypot scheme? If so, for who? Sure would be nice to get an attorney general in office who actually gave a damn about answering any of those questions. So that guy, Joel Greenberg, who's in prison, was he running a honeypot? Did he do that to set up Matt Gaetz? Looks like it. So go ahead, Ian. You take it where you want.
I was just going to say that this is a textbook example of how quickly things get complicated when you overlay covert intelligence operations that are segmented into just infinite amounts of compartmentalized information, and you cross that with corrupt bureaucrats and deep state actors that have all of their own agendas, and you wind up with like covert programs that go south. Then there's people that need things that no one can talk about, and then there's corrupt individuals trying to find behind, like, off the books solutions using their corrupt power networks within compartmentalized intelligence networks, and pretty soon you wind up with like people blackmailing people for rescue missions that aren't supposed to exist, for extortion money that is illegal, and it's like, it sounds insane, but the more you learn about the history of the CIA and just like how intelligence agencies and government actually work, it just sounds more and more like a rerun of last episode. That's insane.
So do you think so? So the theory here, this is an amazing Twitter thread by Mel.
Yeah.
And I remember I was watching Tucker Carlson, or I saw maybe I saw the video of Matt Gaetz on Tucker Carlson because it was such a crazy, bizarre thing. It was like, it sounded like Matt Gaetz was full on batshit crazy.
Yeah.
But now we know.
Before we knew nearly as much about him, too.
Yeah. We didn't know anything about Matt Gaetz at the time.
No.
So the media is always smearing him. And of course, so he goes up against, whenever he goes up against power, they pull this shit out. So now I bet they pulled this shit out again. And they said, hey, but you did have sex with an underage girl, even though you can't be convicted of it because a jury wouldn't find you guilty because this guy set you up with a real Florida ID.
Yeah.
That said she was older.
There's a bigger question there, too, that you were alluding to just a second ago, is like, put the pieces together here. How did this underage girl get into Matt Gaetz's orbit,
right,
and essentially get into a sexual relationship with him? And the only thing that ties all these pieces together is the dude making the fake IDs that was also soliciting a whole bunch of sex from girls that are working on this website. And so if this girl is working on this website soliciting sex, and this guy gets a fake ID for her, and he obviously knows that she's underage, and then somehow that girl that he's related, like, just happens to be the girl that Matt Gaetz has sex with, and that happens to be tied to this other scandal that this guy is tied to, like, I think you're right that starts to point towards potentially there being some sort of honeypot, either single operation or a bigger organization going on. Because we all know that DC is full of honeypot and blackmail operations for this exact purpose.
Not even just there. And Steve Bannon, in his conversations with Epstein, I think this was a 2017 time period as well, because Epstein, there was a lot of information being released about the multiple accounts with multiple minors that he had sexual relations with, and then the blackmail stuff and the human trafficking, drug trafficking piece, and his connections with Barack. You hit Barack, or whatever his name is. Anyways, the Israeli leader at the time, and then Netanyahu for decades. And anyway, he wanted this to be lined up on 60 Minutes. They wanted Rachel Maddow to be the one that interviews Epstein, and they were trying to make it where they would like re-energize his, whatever you want to call it, his how he looks on social media, right? Like part of his marketing team or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, weird.
Exactly.
Because it's not like
when it's like fix his image, if that makes any sense.
A senator like Matt Gaetz isn't just like inherently interacting with a whole bunch of 18-year-old girls in his daily life.
Right.
Like, it's not like there's a whole lot of them walking through his normal daily routine. So the question is, how did she get into his daily routine, and who put her there?
Yep.
That's
and
right.
Is there something else behind that coincidence?
How old is Matt Gaetz? He's 40.
I'm also curious when he married Ginger Gaetz.
He's 42. So he's
not the best luck.
So he was like late 30s when okay. So it's not a crazy theory to think that but also that they then use this because the establishment does not want Matt Gaetz. The Mossad doesn't want Matt Gaetz. Bill Barr, the people who killed Jeffrey Epstein, do not want Matt Gaetz as the attorney general. So they're going to do anything and everything, and they're going to use all the blackmail and compromat that they have to get him out of and withdraw his nomination. And I bet that's what they're going to say. Hey, It doesn't matter if you can be convicted or not. We're going to release the report that has this girl saying you had sex with her when she was 17. We're going to put her on 60 Minutes, and your whole character and life is going to be over.
And like, let's remember, so I just looked it up. So Matt Gaetz got married after this incident allegedly happened. And so he was single at the time, and this girl was working on on a prostitution website. So she's clearly willingly using her sex for money, right?
Right.
And so I think it seems highly likely that Matt was probably approached by her, and I'm speculating, but
Right.
like she's clearly willing to. It's not like she's an unwilling.
Yeah,
victim.
the
It's
way
not
a
like she
honeypot
was-
operation works.
Exactly. And so when Matt Gaetz, as a single man, is approached by a apparently attractive young woman who is presenting as being over 18, there's no crime there on his part at that time. And so they need it to be an underage girl. So it's like an interesting coincidence that the underage girl that happens to have the fake ID just happens to be the one. Like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to One Nation Under Blackmail, everybody.
And that's why he was so, he was so confident about it and wanted to talk about the extortion of his father for 25. He was like, I didn't have sex. I had to do this.
Yeah, and that's all fair. I'm going to stop sharing because it's like at the end of that anyways. I like Ian Carroll too. I do want to share a video that I made almost a year ago, we'll say. Get the volume up. Because I talk about the Freedom Convoy. I talk about Justin Ling and CSIS and stuff like that. So this is a video that I shared, again, almost a year ago. Let's see what I have to say. The threat assessment. June 5th, 2020. So incel and COVID-19 threat assessments. I'm showing you an example of stuff that I look at and review on a regular basis. Not so much in the past week or two, like I've said, but this is the stuff where I get a lot of my information from. And so I'll be looking through this. 91 pages. Sorry. Oh, that's why. Okay, so I was wondering why I'm like, why is it not pulled up, these access to information requests? But it's on a different window. Oh, of course it's not allowing me to. I didn't realize that you could actually see it and do that now. Okay. People take a look at his work, especially if you're government. This is all open source, up in Windows. Get a little. So I've shared this. This was the from an access to information request that Ethos and Eris put through, who's also on Discord, and I highly recommend people take a look at his work, especially if you're government. This is all open source. These are access to information requests that were submitted to government, and then what they provided back. So, and this is the threat assessment that CSIS was using and other people in order to justify the Emergency Act or make it declared, right? Because people wanted it to be declared because it further restricted people. It delegated people as persons of interest that were actual innocent human beings trying to, end tyranny. And yeah, so just a very interesting time. And blatantly lying, even about Diagolon. So the reason why I'm bringing this up again is because they got their threat assessments and citing and referencing a leftist mainstream media not even a journalist, but whatever you want to call him, like from Vice News, Justin Ling. So they referenced, literally CSIS and our government referenced Justin Ling from and CBC News and CBC News and CBC. So far left. And you look at his content and you could see that this guy's a leftist extremist. And so painting people as terrorists, not even naming people. So not even having the fucking the balls to even name people or groups. So since the 15th of January 2022, that's when our government was forcing all truckers through the CBSA, pushing this as well, to be fully vaccinated. And this was even January 15th, 2022. So that's why people kicked off or were incentivized to be part of the Freedom Convoy, because this was overreach, and people knew the writing on the wall. Like and there were so many bears coming out before that time that this was ridiculous. And then it was just approved under emergency use for children 5 to 11 years old, at least at 1/5 the dose, because of people like me pushing this, and Helen Bruce showing the concerns, showing the stats, showing the bears, showing all of that stuff, and then showing the original trials being debunked, showing like older studies, with the mRNA therapeutics, like not doing fucking well in studies at all, and then still pushing it for everyone. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why? How? Even now, January 15th, 2022, ladies and gentlemen. So, and going off of idiots like Justin Ling saying that, and trying to allege that, and not even naming, but Diagolon, which was a parody friggin' entertainment podcaster who's well aware of what's going on in the world and was at risk to himself, sharing information to Canadians and people internationally, and going on other podcast shows internationally, being brave and courageous and actually sharing facts. And of course, lobbyists and corporatists and schmucks and fucking losers in Ottawa mostly. Well, the lobbyists, like people, city employees that are not first responder types and never will be, that are just losers, in my humble opinion, and lazy, egotistical, entitled brats that don't like it when they lose money. But you're losing shares and stocks in the military, pharmaceutical, industrial complex that's killing and harming people. So, I'm sorry that you won't be able to afford your 3rd yacht or your 8th fucking trip around the world this year. But, people are getting more and more homeless in Canada. So maybe focus on that too. So this is like looking at why the Emergency Act was declared, not justifiable at all. Not justifiable at all. They literally went off of, and I was giving them information as well. So top secret government clearance, over 20 years in the high level government stuff, performing well at every single fucking level. And I get, I guess, a person of interest status because of my role in a lot of stuff. And Justin Ling gets cited as like a fucking expert, analyst to declare Emergency Act, which used to be the War Measures Act, which has only been used in World War I and World War II. So literally Justin Ling, these little, and everyone and other people in here as well declared war on Canadians. On February 18th, CGOC notified ITAC of 2 ITAC reports, TH2208 and TH2211. They were featured in the Justin Ling's Twitter account. Justin Ling on February 17, a news article in The Guardian by Justin Ling, by the Guardian. In The Guardian? Wouldn't it be The Guardian? Anyway, by Justin Ling, featured ITAC assessment reporting both the Twitter screenshots and a copy of The Guardian article dated February 17 are attached. So even with this, like I'm looking at this, I'm reading it, and I'm saying even these fucking official government documents, like your fucking spelling mistakes, this is The Guardian. Anyway, this is just my officer fucking formatting spot stuff kicking in, sorry. Yeah, and if you look at it and then you verify what was shown. February 21. So there was no indication that any other ITAC documents were shared on Twitter besides TH2208A. I spoke with about the case yesterday. Okay, so they would have to redact that, obviously, so they're not going to give names. And the distribution list is large. Feel free to give me a call if you'd like to discuss further. Processed under the provisions of the Privacy Act and or Access to Information Act, by the way, for anyone seeing that it's secret. So yeah, just scroll. I know that people have already seen this if you've been following me for a while and found this channel again. And they just keep on, they're so redundant, right? Like, these are fucking formatted, templated documents, like for threat assessment levels, just to make it look more official. There's so many documents here. Like out of these 64 pages, there's a lot of this stuff doesn't even need to be here. Munich Security Conference, 18 to 20 February 2022. Why is this in here? The country religiously motivated violent extremism. Okay, anyway, they're just talking about these topics, planting seeds. A German convoy. Yeah, so this is just talking about international convoys. Now, like, anti-vaccine protests. God, these people are fucking done with their titles too. It wasn't. It was about so much more than that. Ottawa saw approximately 7,000 people protesting, and even that is inaccurate. On Saturday, 5 February 2022, and it started, by the way, and it landed in Ottawa on the 29th of January and a little bit before. So when I was reading this yet again, I was like, what the fuck? People are so late. Not lazy, but just like the lack of detail. Again, this is like more redundant threat levels: critical, high, medium, low, very low, confidence levels. Threat to uniformed personnel unchanged despite increase in online violent rhetoric. No shit. Even though you were trying to use plants and crisis actors, and mainstream media was lying about uniforms being stolen from garages. You know, oh, this might be used from from terrorists. They might go to the Freedom Convoy and pretend to be a lot. No, that fucking was people within government that was planning that, that was staging that shit. And again, I know this because that's been I've been involved in that type of work for many fucking years, and I know the game. And I've even called out from 2010 Bill Blair when he was the chief of police in Toronto, using crisis actors and having law enforcement vehicles burn downtown fucking Toronto for hours with fire departments and everything like that there. So again, this was literally obviously some kind of a scenario being played out because I've trained those. I wouldn't exploit and monopolize and use innocent civilians as cannon fodder or whatever you want to call it, but this fucking idiot did. And judging from assessments made for people that have worked around Bill Blair for many years, he's not well respected or well liked at all. Spoiler alert. Canada was warned before protests that violent extremists infiltrated convoy. Where's the names though? So explosive intelligence assessments warned in late January that it was likely extremists were involved in protests. So this is from Justin Ling. So this is literally the article that that's high levels of government, cabinet, and this is what they use. An article from Justin Ling, him and his boyfriend are fucking having like fucking drinks and like, oh, we're gonna fuck over the MAGA and conservative. Like these fucking idiots just like wrote an article on the 1st of February 2022. Days before the so-called Freedom Convoy reached Ottawa, starting a weeks-long occupation of Canada's capital. And by the way, he doesn't know what an occupation is. I don't think he was an infantry officer. I don't think he did the training. I don't think he did the breakdown of like the different symbols and the different names and the different things and the different descriptors, you know, about raids and ambushes and no, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Justin. I got a little heated there. Talking about blockades and stuff like that. The federal government was warned that violent extremist groups were deeply involved in the protests. By who? Name? No names. Where's the names? They so easily like name QAnon, like outwardly, and oh, this guy like might be connected with the 3%ers or the Proud Boys or the this or the that. But like, where's the fucking names in this threat assessment? Causing more threats. So high levels of government getting this is a report from Justin Ling, and this is what it's saying. And there's instead of getting the actual where did he get this information? Like your government. So there's high-level federal government that are reading this, and they're like, "Oh shit, federal government, you are saying that there's fucking terrorists in it, but you are the federal fucking government, idiots." He's lying, and he's alleging that you guys are the ones that are fucking saying this stuff. I mean, no offense in saying this, but that's fucking dumb. It's beyond dumb. It's beyond dumb. It's not only like unprofessional, but it's like at the highest levels. This shit is not on. Anyway, I know I'm ranting, but I'm like reading this and still in here like extremist groups. Not names were sent to Ottawa police ahead of the convoy's arrival in the capital. Carnival of chaos. Ottawa police face growing flank for failure to end protests. Read more. still going here. Still like very real threats. The report makes particular mention to the QAnon figure Romana Didulo, the self-styled Queen of Canada, who has instructed her followers to kill healthcare workers. Okay. So I still don't see any mention of Diagolon in here or Jeremy McKenzie. And so I'm trying to be thorough. I've looked through this before as well, but I'm still... on Wednesday, the Public Safety Minister, Marco Mendicino, who I've reached out to repeatedly, giving him all of this information, refused to fucking look at it, even though his office absolutely got it. And it was reported with fairly accurate reporting sources that Marco Mendicino's wife had shares and stocks in Northrop Grumman, which is a military contracting company for the Ukraine. Yeah, he's the one that tried to, and he's voting on millions of dollars going to Ukraine and other areas. And it's like, these are like money laundering schemes, ladies and gentlemen, not going on the front lines to employ tanks or wanted to employ tanks from David Lametti, even though, again, this guy's a fucking, like, he's not a first responder type racketeering. Also using crisis actors, lying in cabinet about actions that happened at the Freedom Convoy, blaming arson on people from the Freedom Convoy, even though that was not the fucking case at all. And Brian Fox, you know, like they hired plants and embeds in order to try to elicit emotional responses in people, cause some kind of a fucking riot, just like January 6th. And yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. We have here Diagolon. Some of the men arrested are believed to belong to the loose-knit group known as Diagolon. So this is what I'm talking about as well. This is post. And no names given. So they're talking in here in reference to the Coots brothers that are still in fucking jail, by the way. Wrong. 2 out of the 4 are still in jail. I have to track that because I was just thinking it's been like 2 weeks since I've been tracking, not even, or at least a week since I've been tracking that. And the last I was tracking, because like I know the journalists and stuff like that that are actually reporting on the case. And then as well, they were fucked over and baited and like all of that stuff and plant. And anyway, and so it's very clear. So this is something that needs to make it to some kind of like open trial that all Canadians can watch and make this bigger. Because even what's happening with the Coots cases, like there's so much fucking slimy, dirty cop shit that's being uncovered, and government slimy stuff that's being uncovered. That like people really need to start paying attention to these hearings and these trials, because again, this is all stuff that like after the people finally arrived, people were getting painted with zero evidence, with zero proof, again with a lot of bullshit lies, using mainstream media to exploit people and all that stuff, and with zero proof, zero substantiation, zero data. That's what I mean. Zero fucking proof. Zero. But yeah, so this is what they were doing afterwards in order to, like, these are reports that were filled in afterwards. So for even the 11th of February, for example, and this was like 2 weeks after the Freedom Convoy arrived. And so this is all what I'm saying is like people are trying to add in layers afterwards, knowing that they have to justify the fact that they had no fucking information to declare the Emergency Act. They wanted to, so they had to just add in. But even within the first week, they were only going off of, again, these are articles that were made and social media posts that were made when they were already here. So I hope that makes sense. So the Freedom Convoy was already here and already coming here, and people were going off of Justin Ling literally in order to, that's it, to build the narrative of this right-wing white supremacist anti-vaxxer awful fucking people, coming to Canada's capital to like cause extremism. Ridiculous. And when it was, in fact, it was the actual opposite of what people were trying to do. Yep. People were coming here, not even wanting to. And Tamara Leach, Babar, Pat King, all facing jail. Multiple people I know facing charges. Multiple people try to get lawsuits together to sue the government to make them stop doing this if it ever happens again. And, or the opportunity for it to happen again happens. And punished. Lawfare. Even Chris Sky, I think he was saying it was like $500,000, like in total. fees that they wanted to they were suing, and also the government suing people that again with social media platforms and people that were trying to sue the government, right? So the retaliation with all the taxpayers' money and any money that they could throw at these lawfare suits, just to again, this was targeting people that were speaking out. But because and again, not even just on social media platforms, because Helen Gruce wasn't on social media with this stuff. She was trying to reach out to her chain of command, and when they were pushing it off and not looking at the data that she was providing, then she attempted to go above her chain of command, just like you should be doing when you have information that might that absolutely requires further investigation into linking COVID vaccinations and SIDS. The lives were at risk. The economy was at risk. Societal collapse was at risk. There was a lot of overreach there was no business for that. It was unjustified. And that was the thing as well. It was unjustified. Yeah, I'm just reading. Yeah. And of course, they're going to reference January 6th. Of course. An early report dated 27 January, ITAC concluded that a coordinated complex terrorist attack or planned storming Parliament or other federal locations is unlikely. Of course. Well, that's because they tried that first weekend, the weekend that Helen Gruce was suspended and charged, or at least suspended at that time, and countless other people I know that were working with me, people that I had hired because I was the course coordinator. And and so I training multiple levels of government, but on the standing rapid deployment team courses for these specific people that respond first to natural and man-made disasters, whether it be at home or abroad, international. People from all over the world come to my courses, multiple different countries, in order to attend them in situ, or were. I'd like to get back to that, but yeah, so she was doing these role playing. I was hiring her as a role player and other people, and I was even using one of the police precincts as part of the scenarios for that piece. And so we knew that there were government embeds that staged and planned events in crowds and in other events and undercover, you name it. We knew that, right? We were operating in a higher level government industry, I guess you would call it, and our community, and so knew way more, and still do, about the reality of the world than most fucking people. And for us to get shut down, because this is stuff that was separate from the work that she was doing with Ottawa Police Services, this was above and beyond, right? But with them, she was part of the sexual assault child abuse unit for over 7 years before COVID hit, and that she was the one that had that information on the ground, the expertise, the experience, and the professionalism to do her job in a correct manner. And that is what intimidated people from within, right? Because she's also well educated and articulate, and she was able to clearly articulate herself. But again, there are phone conversations where she does have a little bit of an emotional period, understandably so, when she's talking about I just want to help the babies, I just want to help the children. And because she had been at this for a long time, trying to share information to prevent harm and death. And then what happened at the end of November, early December of 2021, this therapeutic that was not even FDA approved yet, it was still under emergency use authorization. It was approved for Canadian kids, for children. And that was very disheartening, because at that point it had been a year and a half that we had been trying to talk about leaks and how Canadian involvement and the gain of function, and that the therapeutics are actually people contracting COVID via inoculation, et cetera, et cetera. There's all VAERS reports that are out there. So if you're listening live, lucky you, because this channel is going to get deleted, possibly in the next, anyways, but at least this video will be taken down by YouTube in the next 24 hours. I guarantee it, just because of what I'm sharing, despite the fact that I share the actual raw data, the actual proof from the sources, right? So I'll just stop the screen. I know this is a long video, but necessary. Different window. Okay. So this is information that I was sharing, but these are the Pfizer documents that I'm talking about. So cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse events reports for Pfizer, received through 28 February 2021. Oh. So you see here, infections and infestations. I'm showing you what it is. And then 4.6% of people that were in these reports contracted COVID via inoculation. And there's also things like myocarditis, pericarditis, the clots, like you name it, that's in here. But this is just from 2021. I was sharing this information, so a few years, and so was Helen. And then so I'll just get to the other one. I don't know if you can see this. Oh, I don't know if you saw that or not. You might have just seen this. Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry for that. Okay. I'll do this again. I think you can see this one. So this is the like I said, there's through 28 Feb 2021. And if you look at COVID, just Control F search. I show you here. I just want to make sure that you're actually seeing this. Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. And so for a few years, they knew that. I have to go back again. And then even in March of 2022, this was during the Freedom Convoy time. It a little after, and when the war in Russia, Ukraine was announced. And again, these are all things that I called months in advance. It was even on my whiteboard, like I shared. And yeah, same thing. People contracting COVID via inoculation. You're just going to see a lot of COVID come up because it's the title of the report. But I like to be thorough. Okay. So these are total and these are fatalities on the right here, just so you can see total and fatal. And again, only 3 to 5% of the VAERS were actually reported during that time because of financial incentive, because of bias, because of blackmail, bribery, you name it, or for whatever reason, and medical malpractice. So these are coronavirus infections. Lock date, again, 16 March 2022. So it's been a while, it's been 2.5 years, almost 3 years. Asymptomatic COVID-19 and COVID-19, these were infestations. VAERS reports via inoculation, and 41 fatal at that time. Keep on going down. COVID-19 still. They're just trying to break it down so you don't see the true numbers. COVID-19 pneumonia, 52, 15 were fatal. Coronavirus infection at 7. Post-acute, like suspected COVID-19, 88, 4 fatal. This is just COVID alone, right? Where there was a high potentiality of recovering from this illness, whatever you want to call it, disease, and very similar to the flu. And in fact, the testing, you couldn't tell the difference between the flu and SARS-CoV-2. And they're alleging you can now, but there's full on, again, peer-reviewed, published articles that prove that. And anyway, so this is why this is really frustrating, because like this information, like these people that are harassing innocent civilians that are trying to share this information, like they're not looking at what we're providing. Like, I don't understand how I could be painted as some kind of a white supremacist, right-wing conspiracy theorist when I'm not sharing theories here. You know, I'm sharing actual data coming from government. I shared the reports coming out of like technical data reports showing like there was more issues with people that were vaccinated, especially after their second shot, than people that were unvaccinated, and how the original trials were debunked. There was no placebo group, etc. And again, the funding to people like the CDC and the NIH and the FDA, it's a large majority of that is by the pharmaceutical industrial complex. And yeah, long video. Let's see if I come up with anything else in this video. I don't remember everything that I shared. January 6th. But all of the and staged and planned. Staged and planned. So many examples. ideological extremists at some gatherings remain a factor of concern. The report made particular mention of the QAnon figure Romana Didulo, the self-styled Queen of Canada. Again, it's just being redundant, being redundant, like one fucking person. And I don't even know who this person is. And I'm not even gonna lie to you. I've read this report and stuff like that, but I'm gonna look more into this person. But again, not anyone that was in any fucking networks, like any of actual good people, or not good people, but people working on behalf of Canada, like people that are working in government, around government. And at that time, this name was not even someone that what I mean by that was like, this was not anyone in my networks, because this person was possibly a plant or someone that is so extreme and ridiculous that she's getting that attention because it discredits people that were speaking out against the mandates and things like that. So people like me were not pushed in the media, right? No interviews, no nothing, despite the fact that I've talked to journalists repeatedly. Even now, I've had multiple different social media platforms, and then I've been on different podcasts, in the US. Oh, speaking about that, I'll be on White Rabbit podcast tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So take a look at that. But yeah, like emailing all levels of government, being like in that industry at the higher levels, and then again, like being ignored and ghosted or painted as some kind of a conspiracy theorist by people that are perpetuating, trying to make bullshit up. And just like they did with January 6th, they wanted to have a female representative. It's so boring. City where QAnon flag was observed. Oh, and even with these flags as well, these QAnon flags and these Nazi flags, there are plants and crisis actors and role players that are most often the ones that are carrying the controversial flags, the ones to alert and role players and about people or embellishing people's capacities and abilities. And Diagolon isn't a fucking like a. This is what I mean. It's a podcaster. He's a podcaster. It's just the name of his fucking show. And it's a literal comedic act, or whatever you want to call it, with a lot of truth. And the guy's name is Jeremy McKenzie. I've talked about him a lot, and people should take a look at his work because he's very funny, but he's also very serious and he's very well informed. Well, way more informed than Justin Ling. So if CSIS and CBSA and people from within would have just reached out to Jeremy McKenzie and brought him in and hired him instead, and then took what he was sharing and the data that he had, things would have been a lot different too. But instead they went with Justin Ling. Well done. So again, I'm still saying no fucking names besides that Romana. And again, there's no, just saying what makes her dangerous. So this is because I've talked about UFOs too. Switching gears completely. Okay, yeah, and there I'm talking about UFOs, unidentified flying aircrafts. I don't believe, or objects. I don't believe that these are anything from beyond this contained environment. I believe there are military industrial complexes like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General, like there's so many different companies. Not so many. They have a monopoly on this, but that they have advanced technologies, and sometimes we see them. And these are, called in as UFOs because we don't know what the hell they are, but these are just advanced technologies that are being implemented or employed by land, air, and sea. I do want to present that CSIS report, and the only reason why we have it is because of the access to information request that was submitted. Let me see here. Okay, so this is where it is. 64 pages. And these are the people that agreed. Not all. Conservatives were the only one that voted against the Emergency Act being declared. But you've got other people from within, like the CPC, that's the Conservative Party of Canada. LPC is Liberal Party of Canada. Green Party of Canada, Elizabeth May. In analyzing this definition, it turns out the words threats to the security of Canada, all in quotations, might not mean what one might take as a planned meaning when we think to ourselves what a threat to security is. No, it is specifically described as being the meaning that we would find in the Canadian Security Intelligence Service Act. We go to another act to find the definition for threats for the security of Canada. This is fascinating. I think I may be the first one to mention it. Threats to the security of Canada in the Canadian Security Intelligence Service Act is defined with 4 points to describe it. I will read only B because that is the one that most applies in this circumstance. How convenient. According to the Act, threats to the security of Canada include foreign influenced activities within or relating to Canada that are detrimental to the interests of Canada and are clandestine or deceptive or involve a threat to any person. The second part of that definition that we get from the Emergency Act itself says that not only must it be a threat to the security of Canada, such as the one I just read out in definitions from the Security Intelligence Service Act, it must also be serious as to be a national emergency. The declaration which we are debating tonight includes the point that the protests have become a rallying point for anti-government and anti-authority, anti-vaccination, conspiracy theory, and white supremacist groups throughout Canada and other Western countries. It says the protesters have varying ideological grievances, with demands ranging from an end to all public health restrictions to the overthrow of the elected government. That does seem very consistent with our first question about whether this is a threat to the security of Canada. And again, this is all uncorroborated and false, misleading information, and just fear mongering, to be perfectly honest with you. And foreign interference. There's 11 members of Parliament that are on the record that are guilty of foreign interference, and they're still serving. Interesting. Some of them have had to step down, obviously, because they were named, like the names were leaked, but multiple access to information requests were put in. And again, it's not even just involving China. There are multiple people that are working within our government where there's absolutely foreign interference at play, and actual names and facts, and we're going after theories here with no corroboration at all. Anyway, so you can just read what people said if you want. Anyways, I got a lot to do today. So on that note, I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.